Hey y'all, welcome to my channel. I'm Sunny, and today we're diving into one of the most absolutely bonkers stories from medieval history that honestly sounds like something straight out of a soap opera, but I promise you, this actually happened. We're talking about Pope Formosus and what historians call the Cadaver Synod, and trust me, it's exactly as wild as it sounds. We're talking about a time when the papal throne was basically a political football being tossed around by powerful Roman families like they were playing the world's most dangerous game of hot potato. The year was 896 AD, and the Roman Catholic Church was going through what historians politely call a difficult period. I call it absolute chaos with a side of divine intervention, or lack thereof. Popes were being made and unmade faster than TikTok trends, and everyone with a little bit of power wanted their piece of the holy pie. Enter our main character, Pope Formosus. Now, Formosus wasn't just any pope. This man had more political baggage than a senator running for re-election. Born around 816 AD, he'd been climbing the church ladder for decades, and let me tell you, he'd made some enemies along the way. Pope Formosus was what we might call a controversial figure, and that's putting it more gently than a southern belle declining seconds at dinner. This man had been excommunicated not once, but had clawed his way back into the church's good graces, like a cat refusing to stay outside in the rain. Before becoming pope in 891 AD, Formosus had served as cardinal bishop of Porto, and he'd gotten himself mixed up in some serious papal politics. He'd been involved in the whole mess surrounding Pope Nicholas I, and had even been accused of trying to bribe his way to the papal throne. The man was ambitious, y'all, and in medieval times, ambition could get you either a crown or a grave. Sometimes both. But here's where it gets interesting. Despite all the drama surrounding him, Formosus actually managed to become pope and held the position for about 5 years until his death in 896 AD. During his papacy, he dealt with political upheavals, crowned emperors, and generally tried to navigate the treacherous waters of medieval European politics. Not exactly a walk in the park, more like a tightrope walk over a pit of very hungry alligators. Now, most folks would think that dying in office would be the end of the story. Death usually puts a pretty definitive period on someone's earthly troubles, right? Well, sugar. Pope Formosus was about to discover that even death wasn't going to save him from the political vendetta machine that was medieval Rome. After Formosus died, there were a couple of short-lived popes, and then along came Pope Stephen VI in 896 AD. Now, Stephen had what you might call issues with his predecessor. And by issues, I mean the kind of burning hatred that makes family Thanksgivings look like peaceful meditation retreats. Stephen VI had been appointed to his position as Bishop of Anagni by Pope Formosus himself, but apparently that didn't buy much gratitude. Instead, Stephen was backed by the powerful Spoleto family, who had their own beef with Formosus's policies. Politics in medieval Italy were like a soap opera written by someone with serious anger management issues. The Spoleto faction was furious because Formosus had crowned Louis of Provence as Holy Roman Emperor instead of their preferred candidate, Guy IV of Spoleto. When Guy died and his son Lambert became their new hope, they wanted revenge against Formosus for what they saw as his betrayal. The problem was, well, Formosus was already dead. Did that stop them? Oh, honey, sweet summer child, of course it didn't. And here's where our story takes a turn that would make Edgar Allan Poe say, well, that's a bit much. In January of 897 AD, Pope Stephen VI decided to do something that was unprecedented, even by medieval standards, of crazy. He ordered the corpse of Pope Formosus to be dug up, dressed in papal vestments, and put on trial. I kid you not, y'all. They literally exhumed a 9-month-old corpse, propped it up on a throne in the papal court, and proceeded to hold a full legal trial. This event became known as the Cadaver Synod, and it's exactly as macabre as it sounds. Picture this scene, if you can stomach it. There's Pope Stephen VI, presumably trying not to breathe through his nose, addressing a decomposing corpse dressed in full papal regalia. The dead Pope Formosus was assigned a deacon to speak on his behalf, because apparently, even in this fever dream of medieval justice, they wanted to maintain some semblance of legal procedure. The charges against the very dead Formosus were serious business in church terms. Stephen accused him of perjury, of violating church law by moving from one bishopric to another. Remember, he'd been Bishop of Porto before becoming Pope, and of having received the papacy illegally. Basically, Stephen was trying to posthumously cancel Formosus's entire papal career. The trial itself was a spectacle that would have made Jerry Springer weep with envy. Pope Stephen VI ranted and raved at the silent corpse, demanding answers to his accusations. The poor deacon assigned to defend Formosus was in the impossible position of trying to mount a legal defense for someone who was, quite obviously, unable to participate in his own trial. The whole thing was a kangaroo court with the added horror of actual decomposition happening in real time. Stephen VI found Formosus guilty on all charges, shocking absolutely no one, since the defendant was in no position to present much of a defense. But Stephen wasn't content with just a guilty verdict. Oh no, this man went full medieval on the situation. He declared all of Formosus's papal acts invalid, stripped the corpse of its papal vestments, cut off the 3 fingers of the right hand that had been used for consecrations, and then had the body thrown into the Tiber River. Let me just pause here for a moment to let that sink in. A sitting pope dug up his predecessor, put the corpse on trial, mutilated it, and then threw what was left into a river. If this were fiction, editors would send it back with a note saying, "Tone it down, nobody will believe this." Now, as you might imagine, even by medieval standards, this whole situation was a bit much for most people to handle. The Roman citizens were horrified, and keep in mind, these were people who were used to some pretty intense political drama, but digging up dead popes and putting them on trial? That was a bridge too far, even for them. According to legend, after Formosus's body was thrown into the Tiber, it performed several miracles. Fishermen reportedly found the corpse, and it was said to have blessed them. Other stories claimed that a statue of Saint Peter fell over in reverence when the body passed by. Whether you believe in these miracles or not, they certainly didn't help Stephen VI's already shaky reputation. The political backlash was swift and brutal. The Roman people, already fed up with the instability and horrified by the Cadaver Synod, rose up in revolt. In August of 807 AD, just a few months after the trial, Pope Stephen VI was deposed, imprisoned, and then strangled to death in his cell. Medieval justice was nothing if not efficient. But the story doesn't end there, because this whole mess had created a precedent that nobody quite knew how to handle. What do you do when one pope has declared another pope's entire papacy invalid? It's like ecclesiastical inception, a papal crisis within a papal crisis. The popes who followed Stephen VI found themselves in the awkward position of having to deal with this theological and legal nightmare. Pope Theodore II, who succeeded Stephen, lasted all of 20 days, but he managed to use that time to start the process of rehabilitating Formosus's reputation. He had Formosus's body retrieved from the Tiber and reburied in St. Peter's Basilica with full papal honors. Then came Pope John IX, who went even further. He held a synod that officially condemned the Cadaver Synod as illegal and restored Formosus's reputation. All of Formosus's papal acts were declared valid again, and Stephen VI's actions were officially denounced. But wait, there's more. Because this is medieval church politics, where nothing stays settled for long. Pope Sergius III, who became pope in 904, was a supporter of the original anti-Formosus faction. He basically undid everything that Theodore II and John IX had done. once again condemning Formosus and validating Stephen VI's actions. This back and forth continued for years, with different popes taking different positions on the Formosus controversy, depending on their political allegiances. It was like a theological tennis match played with the reputation of a dead man. Now, you might be wondering why this bizarre episode from over 1,000 years ago matters today. Well, the Cadaver Synod represents one of the lowest points in papal history and shows us just how far political ambition can corrupt even the most sacred institutions. This whole mess happened during what historians call the Saculum Obscurum, or the Dark Age of the papacy, roughly from 904 to 964 AD. During this period, the papal office was controlled by powerful Roman families who used it as a tool for their own political and financial gain. The Cadaver Synod was just the most dramatic example of how far things had fallen. The story also shows us the power of symbolism and ritual in medieval society. The reason Stephen VI went through all the trouble of exhuming and trying Formosus wasn't just personal revenge, it was an attempt to completely erase his predecessor's legitimacy. In a world where religious authority was the ultimate source of political power, declaring a pope's actions invalid was like trying to rewrite history itself. But perhaps most importantly, the Cadaver Synod demonstrates the resilience of institutions and the ultimate futility of trying to destroy someone's legacy through purely vengeful acts. Despite all the back-and-forth condemnations and rehabilitations, history remembers both Formosus and Stephen VI, but it's Stephen who comes off looking like the villain of the piece. The Cadaver Synod has lived on in historical memory as one of the most bizarre episodes in church history. It's been referenced in literature, art, and historical works for over 1,000 years as an example of how power can corrupt and how political vendettas can lead to absolutely unhinged behavior. The event also had lasting theological implications. It raised questions about papal infallibility and the validity of papal acts that weren't fully resolved until much later in church history. Can a pope's actions be invalidated by a successor? What happens when different popes contradict each other? These weren't just academic questions. They had real implications for the legitimacy of church governance. In many ways, the Cadaver Synod marked a turning point in how the church thought about papal authority and succession. It showed that even the highest religious office wasn't immune from the petty political squabbles that plagued medieval Europe, and it highlighted the need for more stable institutional structures. So there you have it, y'all. The absolutely bonkers story of Pope Formosus and the Cadaver Synod. It's a tale that has everything: political intrigue, religious controversy, grave robbing, a literal trial of the dead, popular uprisings, and enough plot twists to make your head spin. The story of Pope Formosus reminds us that history is full of moments that are stranger than any fiction we could dream up. It shows us that even in the most solemn and sacred institutions, human nature, with all its petty jealousies, political ambitions, and capacity for both great evil and great good, always finds a way to shine through. It also reminds us that trying to completely destroy someone's legacy through pure vindictiveness usually backfires spectacularly. Stephen VI thought he was erasing Formosus from history, but instead he ensured that both their names would be remembered together forever, though not in the way he probably intended. Well, that's all for today's deep dive into medieval papal drama, y'all. If you enjoyed this wild ride through church history, don't forget to smash that like button, subscribe for more historical stories, and ring that notification bell so you never miss an upload. I love hearing from y'all, so drop a comment below and let me know. What do you think was the most shocking part of the Cadaver Synod story? Was it the actual digging up of the corpse, the trial itself, or maybe the political aftermath that followed? Let me know what you think.